A year passed after everything happened. If someone had told me years earlier that my life would look like this, I probably would not have believed them. Not because I became successful, not because my company was growing, but because, for the first time in my life, I felt calm. That was something money could never buy. The strange thing was that after the truth came out, my family slowly started changing. Not overnight, not in some dramatic movie scene, just little things. My mother stopped calling only when she needed something. My father began asking about my work. Sometimes he would even listen to the answer. Jessica changed too. At first, I thought it was temporary. I thought she was only being nice because she felt embarrassed. But months passed, then more months, and she kept trying. Still, I was careful. I had spent too many years being hurt. I was polite, I was respectful, but I also kept healthy boundaries. I no longer dropped everything when someone called. I no longer said yes to things that exhausted me. And for the first time, I stopped feeling guilty about it. That alone changed my life. Meanwhile, my company continued growing, quietly. I never became the kind of person who posted luxury photos online. I never felt the need. The work itself made me happy. Every new project felt like proof that I was building something real, something nobody could take away from me. Then something unexpected happened. The millionaire investor who had first believed in my designs reached out again. This time it wasn't about a single project. He wanted a partnership. When I read the email, I sat there staring at the screen. I remembered all those nights when I worked alone, all those moments when people laughed at my dreams, all those times I wondered if I should quit. And now this opportunity was sitting right in front of me. Life can be strange like that. The things you chase often run away, but the things you build patiently sometimes find their way back to you. As the business grew, I found myself thinking about younger artists. They reminded me of myself, talented, hardworking, but unsure of their worth. Many of them had families who did not support them. Many had been told their dreams were unrealistic. I knew exactly how that felt, so I started mentoring them. Nothing formal, just conversations, advice, encouragement. Sometimes a small opportunity when I could provide one. Watching them gain confidence became one of the most rewarding parts of my journey. Then one afternoon, Jessica asked if we could meet. Just the two of us. I was nervous. Part of me still expected disappointment. We sat across from each other in a quiet cafe. For a few moments, neither of us spoke. Then Jessica looked down at her hands, and she started crying. Not loudly, just quietly, the way people cry when they have been carrying something heavy for a long time. She apologized, really apologized, not excuses, not explanations, just honesty. She admitted she had been jealous. She admitted she had enjoyed being the favorite. And she admitted that she had hurt me. I listened. And for the first time, I believed her. That conversation did not erase the past. Nothing could do that. But it helped something inside me finally let go. Because I realized something important. Success is not revenge. Success is peace. It is waking up without anger. It is building a life you love. It is no longer needing anyone's permission to believe in yourself. And maybe that was the greatest lesson of all. Sometimes people only see your value after you stop trying to prove it. And if you've ever been underestimated, ignored, or made to feel small, this story is for you. After my conversation with Jessica, I drove home in silence. Not because I was upset, not because I was angry. I was thinking about how much life had changed. For years, I imagined what it would feel like if my family finally admitted the truth. I thought it would be some huge moment. I thought all the pain would disappear. I thought I would feel victorious, but that wasn't what happened. The truth was much quieter. The apology mattered. It really did. But it didn't magically erase 18 years of feeling invisible. It didn't bring back birthdays that were forgotten. It didn't change the countless nights I cried alone. What it did give me was something else: closure. And sometimes closure is enough. Over the next several months, my relationship with my family slowly improved. My parents started making an effort, small efforts, the kind that might seem normal to other people. But for me, they meant a lot. My mother began calling just to ask how I was doing. Sometimes she would ask about a project I was working on. Sometimes she would simply tell me about her day. Nothing dramatic, nothing emotional, just normal conversations. And strangely, that was what made them special. For the first time, our relationship felt balanced. My father changed too. One afternoon, he asked if he could visit my office. A few years earlier, I would have been desperate for that moment. Back then, I wanted his approval more than anything. Now I simply said yes. When he arrived, he looked around quietly. He saw my team. He saw our work. He saw the company I had built. For several minutes, he didn't say much. Then he smiled, a real smile. And he said something I never expected to hear. "I'm proud of you, Emma." Just 6 words. But they carried years of meaning. I thanked him. Then we continued talking about work. No tears, no dramatic scene. Just 2 adults having a conversation. And honestly, that felt better. Meanwhile, the partnership opportunity continued moving forward. The investor who had supported me from the beginning remained involved. He introduced me to people I never imagined meeting: business owners, creative leaders, successful entrepreneurs. Many of them had stories similar to mine. Stories of rejection, stories of doubt, stories of proving people wrong. The more people I met, the more I realized something important. Almost everyone carries invisible struggles. We just don't always see them. As my company expanded, I became even more committed to helping young artists. Some were fresh out of school. Some were trying to rebuild their confidence after years of criticism. Every time I sat down with one of them, I saw a little of my younger self. The version of me who doubted everything. The version of me who was waiting for permission to believe in herself. So I tried to give them what nobody gave me: encouragement, guidance, opportunity. And watching them succeed became one of the greatest rewards of my life. Because success feels different when you can share it. One evening, after finishing a mentoring session, I sat alone in my office. The city lights glowed outside the window. Everything was quiet. I thought about the little girl I used to be, the girl who felt ignored, the girl who worked hard, hoping someone would finally notice. I wished I could tell her something. I would tell her that her value was never missing. People simply failed to see it. And sometimes that's the difference. Sometimes people only see your value after you stop trying to prove it. That lesson changed my life. And if you've ever been underestimated, if you've ever felt unseen, if you've ever wondered whether your efforts mattered, this story is for you. The funny thing about healing is that it rarely happens all at once. Most people think healing is some big moment, a breakthrough, a dramatic conversation, a life-changing event. But for me, it happened slowly, almost so slowly that I didn't notice it. One day I realized I hadn't thought about the past for several hours, then several days, then even longer. The painful memories were still there. They would always be part of my story, but they no longer controlled my life. That was the difference. For years, every decision I made was connected to proving something. I wanted my family to see me. I wanted them to acknowledge my effort. I wanted them to understand my worth. Now those feelings were fading, not because I stopped caring completely, but because I finally understood something. My value was never dependent on their approval. It never had been. And once I accepted that, everything became lighter. Around that time, my company entered another stage of growth. Nothing flashy, nothing that made headlines, just steady progress. The kind that comes from years of consistent work. New clients arrived through recommendations. Existing clients returned with larger projects. Our team expanded. We hired talented people who cared about the work as much as I did. Sometimes I would walk through the office and quietly smile. Not because of the success, but because I remembered where it all started. A tiny apartment, a second-hand desk, a laptop that constantly froze, and a girl who wasn't sure if she was good enough. Looking back, I wanted to hug that version of myself. She had no idea what was waiting ahead. One afternoon, I received another call from the investor who had helped change my life. By then, we had become friends as well as business partners. He invited me to lunch. During the meeting, he presented several new opportunities. Some involved international projects. Others involved expanding into different creative industries. The possibilities felt exciting, but what surprised me most was what he said afterward. "Emma," he told me, "the reason people trust you isn't because you're successful." I looked at him curiously. He smiled. "It's because you've stayed the same person." Those words stayed with me, because I had seen success change some people. I had seen money become their entire identity. I never wanted that. I never wanted my achievements to become more important than my character. And maybe that was why helping others became so important to me. A few months later, I launched a small mentorship program. Nothing complicated, just a space where young artists could receive guidance and support. Many of them came from difficult backgrounds. Many carried the same self-doubt I once carried. Every time one of them succeeded, I felt genuine happiness, not because of what it said about me, but because I knew how much courage it took. One young woman thanked me after receiving her first major contract. She told me she had almost given up. She told me she thought nobody believed in her. As she spoke, I saw tears forming in her eyes. And suddenly I remembered myself, years earlier, feeling exactly the same way. That moment reminded me why all of this mattered. Success was never about proving people wrong. Success was never about showing off. Success was never about revenge. It was about freedom. Freedom to live without carrying old pain. Freedom to build a life that feels honest. Freedom to become the person you were always meant to be. As for my family, things continued improving, slowly, naturally, without pressure, without expectations. The relationships were healthier now because they were built on truth instead of approval. And for the first time, I felt at peace with that. Because sometimes people only see your value after you stop trying to prove it. And if you've ever been underestimated, if you've ever been ignored, if you've ever spent years wondering whether you were enough, I hope you remember this. You were always enough. You just couldn't see it yet, and neither could they. As time passed, I stopped measuring my life by what other people thought of me. That may sound simple, but for someone who spent years chasing approval, it was one of the hardest lessons to learn. For a long time, every achievement felt like a test. Every success felt like proof. I wanted people to finally see me. I wanted them to understand my worth. I wanted them to say I was enough, but eventually something changed. I stopped waiting, and strangely, that was when life became easier. My company continued growing at a steady pace. Nothing happened overnight. There were still difficult weeks. There were still mistakes. There were still projects that didn't work out. But I no longer treated setbacks as proof that I was failing. I treated them as part of the journey. That mindset changed everything. One afternoon, I received another call from the investor who had believed in me years earlier. By then, we had already completed several successful projects together. I respected him deeply, not because of his money, but because he had always treated me with respect. Something I wasn't used to when we first met. During our meeting, he surprised me again. He wanted to expand our partnership, not just as an investor, as a long-term business partner. For a moment, I sat there quietly. I remembered the small apartment where I started. I remembered working late into the night. I remembered all the rejection emails, all the people who told me my dreams were unrealistic. And now someone successful was asking to build something bigger with me. Life has a funny way of rewarding patience, not always quickly, not always fairly. But sometimes the rewards arrive when you least expect them. I accepted the opportunity, and together we started working on projects that once felt impossible. At the same time, I found myself becoming more passionate about helping others, especially young artists. Many of them reminded me of my younger self. They were talented, creative, hardworking, but they doubted themselves. Some had families who didn't support their goals. Others had spent years hearing criticism. I understood those feelings better than most. Whenever they shared their fears, I listened. Whenever they felt discouraged, I encouraged them. And whenever I had an opportunity to help, I did. Not because I wanted recognition, because I knew how powerful one person's belief could be. Sometimes all someone needs is a single person who says, "Keep going." I never had much of that growing up, so I wanted to be that person for someone else. Meanwhile, things with my family continued improving, slowly, naturally. No one was pretending the past never happened. And honestly, I didn't want that. Healing isn't about forgetting. It's about moving forward. My parents started respecting my boundaries. Jessica continued making an effort, and for the first time in years, family gatherings felt peaceful. Not perfect, but peaceful. There is a difference. Then one evening, after a family dinner, Jessica stayed behind after everyone else left. She looked nervous, almost like she wanted to say something important. I could tell she had been carrying it for a while. She took a deep breath. Then she looked directly at me. What she said next became one of the most meaningful moments of my life, because this time, her apology came from a completely different place. This ending creates a smooth bridge into part 5 while maintaining retention and emotional momentum. Jessica sat quietly for a few seconds. It looked like she was searching for the right words. For most of our lives, conversations between us had never been very deep. There had always been distance, competition, unspoken tension. But this felt different. The room was quiet. The dinner dishes were still on the table. Everyone else had already gone home. For the first time, it was just the two of us. Then Jessica finally spoke. "Emma, I don't think I've ever really understood what you went through." Her voice was soft, almost uncertain. I didn't say anything. I simply listened. She looked down at her hands. "I used to think everything came easily to me because I deserved it." She paused. "And I thought you were stronger than me." That surprised me. For years, I had seen Jessica as the confident one, the favorite, the person who never seemed to struggle. But now I could see something different. I could see regret, real regret. She continued speaking. "When Mom and Dad praised me, I liked it." Her voice shook slightly. "When they compared us, I didn't stop them." She swallowed hard. "Sometimes I even enjoyed it." The honesty hurt, but strangely it also helped. Because for the first time, nobody was pretending. Nobody was rewriting history. Nobody was acting like the past never happened. Jessica was simply telling the truth, and that mattered. Then she looked directly at me. "I was wrong, Emma." 4 simple words, but they carried years of meaning. "I should have treated you better." Tears formed in her eyes. "I should have stood beside you." For a moment, neither of us spoke. I could see how difficult this was for her, and I realized something important. Apologies don't erase pain, but sincere accountability can help people heal. I took a deep breath, then I smiled gently. "I appreciate you saying that." That was all. No dramatic speech, no anger, no revenge, just honesty. And somehow that felt enough. Over the following months, our relationship slowly became stronger. Not perfect, not instant. Trust takes time. But little by little, things improved. We started talking more often. Sometimes we met for coffee. Sometimes we simply exchanged messages. For the first time, it felt like I had a sister instead of a rival. And honestly, I never expected that. Meanwhile, life continued moving forward. My company reached another major milestone. Several new projects launched successfully. The partnership opportunities kept growing. The investor who had first believed in me remained one of my strongest supporters. But something inside me had changed. Years earlier, achievements felt like victories. Now they felt like responsibilities. I wasn't focused on proving people wrong anymore. I was focused on creating opportunities, helping others, building something meaningful. That shift changed everything. One day, a young artist from my mentorship program called me. She had just signed her first major contract. She was crying with happiness. Between tears, she thanked me for believing in her. After the call ended, I sat quietly in my office, and suddenly I understood something. The greatest reward wasn't the money. It wasn't the recognition. It wasn't the business success. The greatest reward was knowing that someone else now believed in themselves. Because sometimes one act of encouragement can change an entire life. That realization stayed with me, and as I looked out the window that evening, watching the city lights below, I felt something I had chased for years. Not validation, not approval, not revenge, peace, real peace. The kind that comes when you finally stop carrying old pain. The kind that comes when you stop trying to prove your worth. Because the truth is simple. Sometimes people only see your value after you stop trying to prove it. And if you've ever been underestimated, if you've ever felt invisible, if you've ever worked hard while nobody seemed to notice, I hope you never give up on yourself. because your value was never determined by what other people failed to see. It was there all along, waiting for you to believe it too. After everything that happened, people often asked me the same question. Were you happy they finally realized their mistake? At first, I never knew how to answer, because the truth was complicated. Part of me was grateful, part of me was relieved, but another part of me understood something important. Their realization came years after I needed it most. When I was a teenager struggling alone, they didn't see me. When I was working late nights to build my future, they didn't see me. When I doubted myself and wondered if I was worth anything at all, they didn't see me. And that's why I had learned a lesson I would never forget. Sometimes healing means accepting that some people arrive late, very late. The important thing is deciding whether you will stay trapped in the past or continue moving forward. I chose to move forward. That choice changed everything. My company continued growing in ways I never imagined. Not because I chased growth, not because I became obsessed with success, but because I genuinely loved the work. Every project felt meaningful. Every challenge taught me something. And every new opportunity reminded me how far I had come. The investor who had become my business partner often joked that I was the calmest entrepreneur he had ever met. I laughed whenever he said it, because if he had known me years earlier, he would never have described me that way. Back then, I worried about everything. I overthought every mistake. I carried every criticism with me. Now things were different. I still worked hard. I still cared deeply. But I no longer attached my self-worth to every outcome. That freedom made me stronger. One afternoon, we attended a business conference together. The room was filled with successful people, founders, investors, industry leaders. Years ago, I would have felt intimidated. I would have compared myself to everyone there. Instead, I felt surprisingly comfortable, not because I thought I was better than anyone, because I no longer felt less than anyone. That was a huge difference. Confidence doesn't come from believing you're superior. It comes from accepting yourself. And for the first time in my life, I truly accepted myself. Around the same time, my mentorship program continued growing. More young artists joined, more success stories appeared. One young designer told me she almost quit pursuing her dream because nobody in her family supported her. As she shared her story, I felt something tighten in my chest. I knew that feeling. I knew what it was like to work hard while the people closest to you doubted you. So I listened carefully. Then I told her something I wish someone had told me years earlier. Don't wait for permission to believe in yourself. She smiled through tears, and in that moment, I realized how powerful those words really were. Because that advice wasn't just for her, it was for the younger version of me, too. The girl who spent years trying to earn love. The girl who thought success would finally make everyone understand her value. She didn't know yet that value doesn't come from achievements. It comes from within. Meanwhile, my family relationships continued improving. My parents respected my boundaries now. Jessica continued making an effort. And for the first time, our interactions felt genuine. There were no expectations, no comparisons, no competitions, just people trying to do better. That didn't erase the past, but it made the future feel lighter. One evening, after a quiet family dinner, I sat alone on my porch watching the sunset. The sky was painted with soft shades of orange and gold. Everything felt peaceful. And as I sat there, I realized something that would stay with me forever. The life I had always wanted wasn't actually about success. It wasn't about money. It wasn't about proving anyone wrong. It was about peace. The peace of knowing who I am. The peace of no longer chasing approval. The peace of waking up each morning without carrying old wounds. That was the real reward. And maybe that's why success finally felt different. Because it was no longer something I used to fill in empty space. It was simply one part of a life I genuinely loved. Sometimes people only see your value after you stop trying to prove it. But the most important person who needs to see your value is you. Everything else comes later. And if you've ever been underestimated, if you've ever felt overlooked, if you've ever questioned your worth because of how others treated you, I hope you remember this. You do not need anyone's permission to believe in yourself. You never did. The older I became, the more I understood something that used to confuse me. Peace is not the absence of problems. Peace is learning that not every problem deserves your energy. That lesson took me years to learn. For most of my life, I carried everything. Every criticism, every unfair comment, every rejection. I replayed old conversations in my head. I questioned myself constantly. I wondered what I could have done differently. But eventually, I stopped asking those questions. Not because I stopped caring, because I finally realized some answers would never come. And that's okay. Life doesn't always give us perfect explanations. Sometimes it simply gives us opportunities to move forward. That's exactly what I chose to do. By then, my company had become larger than I ever imagined. We had clients from different cities, some from different countries. The partnership with my investor continued opening new doors. Together, we worked on projects that challenged me in exciting ways. But the most surprising part was how little those achievements affected me emotionally. Years earlier, reaching these milestones would have felt like winning a battle. Now they simply felt like another step forward. I was grateful, proud even, but I didn't need success to validate me anymore. That need had finally disappeared. And honestly, that freedom felt more valuable than any business achievement. One morning, I was invited to speak at an event for young entrepreneurs and artists. Standing backstage, I looked at the crowd. Many of them were nervous. Many were just beginning their journeys. I recognized that expression immediately. I had worn it myself for years. When it was my turn to speak, I shared my story. Not the polished version, not the successful version. The real version. The uncertainty, the rejection, the self-doubt. The years of feeling invisible. Afterward, several people approached me. One young woman stood quietly in line waiting to speak with me. When she finally reached me, she smiled nervously. Then she said something I'll never forget. "You made me feel like I'm not alone." Those words stayed with me long after the event ended, because that was exactly what I needed to hear when I was younger. Sometimes people don't need solutions. Sometimes they just need hope. And if I could give someone hope, then every difficult chapter of my life suddenly had a purpose. Meanwhile, my relationship with Jessica continued improving. One weekend, she invited me to spend the afternoon with her. Just the two of us. A few years earlier, that would have felt impossible. But now it felt natural. During our conversation, she admitted something that surprised me. She told me she had struggled with guilt for a long time. After everything came to light, she began seeing our childhood differently. She noticed things she never noticed before: the comparisons, the favoritism, the unfair expectations. She finally understood what I had experienced. Listening to her wasn't satisfying in the way people might expect. I didn't feel victorious. I didn't feel vindicated. I simply felt sad for both of us. Because favoritism hurts everyone, even the person being favored. It creates distance. It creates unhealthy expectations. And it damages relationships that should have been built on love. That conversation helped us understand each other better, not as competitors, not as sisters fighting for approval, but as two adults trying to heal, and that made all the difference. As the months passed, I found myself smiling more often, laughing more easily, sleeping better. The constant pressure I once carried was gone. For the first time in my life, I wasn't trying to become enough. I already knew I was enough. That understanding changed everything. One evening, after finishing work, I sat alone in my office. The city lights stretched across the horizon. My team had gone home hours earlier. The building was quiet. As I looked around, I thought about how different my life had become. Not because I had money, not because I had success, but because I finally had peace. And in that moment, I realized something simple. The greatest achievement of my life wasn't building a company. It was building a life where I no longer needed to prove my worth. Because sometimes people only see your value after you stop trying to prove it. And if you've ever been underestimated, if you've ever been treated like your dreams didn't matter, if you've ever worked quietly while nobody seemed to notice, please remember this: your worth does not increase when people finally recognize it. Your worth was always there. You just needed to see it for yourself. One thing nobody talks about after a long struggle is what happens when the struggle finally ends. People often focus on the breakthrough, the success story, the moment everything changes. But very few people talk about what comes afterward. For me, the answer was simple. Life became quieter. And that quietness felt beautiful. There were no more sleepless nights wondering whether I was good enough. There were no more desperate attempts to earn someone's approval. There were no more exhausting battles inside my head. Instead, there was peace, real peace, the kind that arrives slowly, the kind you almost don't notice until one day you realize it's been there all along. Around that time, my business partner approached me with another opportunity. By then, our partnership had become one of the strongest parts of my professional life. We trusted each other, we respected each other, and most importantly, we shared similar values. He invited me to a meeting about a large international project, something much bigger than anything I had worked on before. As he explained the details, I felt excited, but I also noticed something interesting. The excitement wasn't coming from a desire to prove myself. Years ago, an opportunity like this would have felt personal. I would have seen it as another chance to show everyone what I could do. Now it felt different. I simply wanted to create something meaningful. That shift changed the entire experience. Success feels much lighter when it isn't carrying the weight of old wounds. As the company continued growing, I became even more involved with mentoring young artists. Many of them came from difficult situations. Some had unsupportive families. Others had experienced failure and rejection. A few were struggling with confidence so deeply that they questioned whether they should continue at all. Whenever they shared their fears, I listened carefully. Not because I had all the answers, but because I understood those feelings. I remembered what it was like to doubt myself. I remembered feeling invisible. I remembered thinking that maybe everyone else was right about me. Those memories never completely disappear, but they can become useful. They can become the reason someone else decides not to give up. One afternoon, a young artist named Sarah stopped by my office. She had been part of the mentorship program for over a year. When she first joined, she barely spoke. She doubted every idea she had. Now she walked into my office carrying a huge smile. She had just landed her dream job. As she told me the news, her eyes filled with tears. Then she said something that touched me deeply. "You believed in me before I believed in myself." For a moment, I couldn't speak, because those words reminded me of something. Every person needs encouragement. Every person needs support. Every person needs someone who sees their potential. And when they don't receive it, the damage can last for years. That was exactly why helping others had become so important to me. Meanwhile, things at home remained steady. My parents continued trying. Jessica continued showing up. Not because she wanted something, not because she felt guilty, because she genuinely cared. That difference mattered. One evening, we all gathered for a family dinner. Nothing special, no celebration, no major event, just a simple meal together. As I sat there listening to everyone talk and laugh, I noticed something unusual. I felt comfortable, not guarded, not anxious, comfortable. That feeling would have seemed impossible years earlier. Back then, family gatherings often left me feeling exhausted. Now they felt normal. And maybe that was the greatest sign of healing. Not dramatic forgiveness, not emotional speeches, just normal moments that no longer hurt. Later that night, as I drove home, I thought about everything that had happened: the rejection, the loneliness, the years of trying to prove myself, the success, the healing, the peace, and suddenly, one truth became clearer than ever. Success is not revenge. Success is waking up happy with who you are. Success is no longer needing validation from people who couldn't see your worth. Success is finding peace within yourself, because sometimes people only see your value after you stop trying to prove it. And if you've ever been underestimated, if you've ever been overlooked, if you've ever felt like nobody noticed your effort, please don't give up. The people around you may not see your value yet, but that doesn't mean it isn't there. It always was. And one day, you'll finally see it too. There was a time when I believed success would feel like crossing a finish line. I imagined reaching a certain point where all the pain would disappear, where every doubt would vanish, where every old wound would finally heal. But life doesn't work that way. Healing isn't a destination, it's a process, and success isn't a finish line. It's simply one part of a much bigger journey. By this point, my company had become stable. Not just financially, emotionally. The team felt like a family. Not the kind of family built through obligation. The kind built through trust. People supported each other. They celebrated each other's victories. They helped each other through difficult moments. Sometimes I would walk through the office and feel grateful. Not because of what we had built, but because of how we had built it. With kindness, with respect, with patience. Those values mattered to me more than any award or achievement ever could. One morning, I received an email from a young artist who had attended one of my workshops several years earlier. At first, I barely remembered her name, but as I read the message, Tears slowly filled my eyes. She explained that she had nearly abandoned her dream after years of criticism. Then she attended one of my talks. She said something I shared that day stayed with her. Your value doesn't disappear simply because someone fails to recognize it. Those words encouraged her to keep going. Now she owned her own successful design business. As I finished reading her message, I sat quietly for a long time. Because moments like that reminded me why everything mattered. Success feels different when it becomes bigger than yourself. It stops being about personal achievement. It becomes about impact. It becomes about helping someone else believe they can keep going. And honestly, that felt better than any business milestone. Around that same time, my relationship with my family continued evolving, slowly, naturally. There was no pressure anymore, no expectations, no need to force anything. The healing happened because everyone chose it. And that's the only kind of healing that truly lasts. One afternoon, my mother called and asked if I wanted to have lunch together. Just the two of us. Years earlier, I would have spent days preparing for a conversation like that. I would have worried about saying the wrong thing. I would have hoped for approval. Now I simply agreed. We spent hours talking, not about old wounds, not about mistakes, just about life. At one point, she looked at me and smiled. "You seem happy," she said. For a moment, I thought about that. Then I realized she was right. I was happy. Not because everything was perfect, not because every problem had disappeared, because I had finally stopped carrying burdens that didn't belong to me. That changed everything. As the months passed, opportunities continued appearing. The partnership projects expanded. New creative ventures emerged. The future looked brighter than ever. But something inside me remained exactly the same. I still preferred quiet mornings. I still loved helping young artists. I still found joy in simple conversations. And I still believed success meant much more than money. Because money can make life easier, but peace makes life meaningful. That lesson became the foundation of everything I did. One evening, while organizing old documents, I found a notebook from years earlier. Inside were pages filled with goals, dreams, fears, questions. I smiled as I read them. The younger version of me was trying so hard, trying to earn love, trying to earn respect, trying to earn a place where she belonged. If I could speak to her now, I would tell her something simple. You don't have to earn your worth, you already have it. And that's what took me so many years to understand. Sometimes people only see your value after you stop trying to prove it. Sometimes the people who overlooked you eventually realize their mistake. Sometimes they don't. But either way, your value remains the same. Because your worth was never dependent on their opinion. And if you've ever been underestimated, if you've ever been overlooked, if you've ever spent years trying to prove yourself to people who refuse to see you, I hope you remember this. The greatest success isn't proving them wrong. The greatest success is finally finding peace within yourself. And once you find that peace, nobody can take it away. Looking back now, I sometimes struggle to recognize the person I used to be. Not because I've changed completely. The same heart is still there, the same dreams, the same determination. But the fear is gone. The constant need for approval is gone. The endless pressure to prove myself is gone. And that has made all the difference. For years, I thought success would come from reaching some huge goal. I thought it would arrive with recognition, awards, money, achievements. But life taught me something much different. Success isn't about what you gain, it's about what you no longer need. I no longer needed validation. I no longer needed comparisons. I no longer needed people to finally understand my value. That freedom became the greatest gift of all. Around that time, my company entered another exciting chapter. The international projects continued growing. New partnerships opened doors I never imagined. My business partner often joked that I was becoming impossible to keep up with, but the truth was simple. I wasn't chasing success anymore. I was simply following purpose. And purpose feels very different. Success asks, what can I achieve? Purpose asks, who can I help? That small difference changed the direction of my entire life. The mentorship program became one of my favorite responsibilities. Every month, I met young artists who reminded me of the person I used to be. Some lacked confidence, some lacked support. Some had spent years hearing that their dreams were unrealistic. Whenever they shared their stories, I listened carefully, because I understood what those wounds felt like. One afternoon, a young woman approached me after a workshop. She looked nervous, almost afraid to speak. Then she handed me a small note. After she left, I opened it. Inside, she had written, "Thank you for proving that quiet people can succeed too." I stared at those words for a long time, because she didn't know it. But years earlier, I desperately needed that reminder myself. The world often celebrates loud people, confident people, people who seem fearless. But many of us build our lives quietly, one small step at a time, one difficult day at a time. And there is strength in that too. Meanwhile, my family continued growing in their own ways. The changes were no longer new. They had become normal. My parents respected my boundaries. Jessica remained an important part of my life, not because we forgot the past, because we learned from it. And maybe that's what true healing looks like. Not pretending pain never happened, but refusing to let pain control the future. One evening, my family gathered for dinner again. As I sat there listening to everyone laugh, I noticed something unusual. There was no tension, no hidden resentment, no need to protect myself, just peace, simple peace. And for a moment, I thought about how badly I once wanted moments like this. Back then, I believed happiness would arrive after everyone finally admitted they were wrong. Now I understood something much deeper. Happiness arrived when I stopped making my peace dependent on other people. That realization changed everything. Later that night, I drove home beneath a sky full of stars. The roads were quiet. The city lights stretched into the distance. And as I sat at a red light, a simple thought entered my mind. I had spent years trying to prove my worth, years trying to earn what should have been given freely, years believing that success would finally make people see me. But the truth was much simpler. The moment I stopped chasing approval was the moment I found peace. And peace turned out to be far more valuable than revenge ever could be. Because success is not revenge. Success is waking up happy. Success is protecting your peace. Success is becoming the person you needed when you were younger. Success is knowing your worth, even when others fail to see it. Sometimes people only see your value after you stop trying to prove it. And if you've ever been underestimated, if you've ever been overlooked, if you've ever felt invisible while carrying burdens nobody noticed, then I want you to remember something. Your value is not determined by the people who fail to recognize it. Your worth does not increase when someone finally appreciates you. You were valuable from the beginning. You always were. And maybe one day, just like I did, you'll stop trying to prove it. You'll simply live it. And that's when everything changes. If there is one thing this journey taught me, it's that peace is something you create. It doesn't arrive one morning and magically stay forever. It takes choices, small choices, daily choices. The choice to let go of resentment. The choice to stop comparing yourself to others. The choice to protect your boundaries. The choice to believe in your own value even when other people don't. For years, I made the opposite choices, not because I wanted to, because I didn't know any better. I thought my happiness depended on being accepted. I thought my confidence depended on being praised. I thought my worth depended on being recognized. But life has a way of teaching us difficult lessons. And eventually I learned that none of those things were true. My worth existed long before anyone acknowledged it. That understanding changed the way I lived. The business continued growing, the partnerships continued expanding, the opportunities kept arriving, but something inside me stayed grounded. Every morning I still enjoyed the simple parts of life. A quiet cup of coffee, a conversation with a friend, a walk through the city before work. Those moments mattered more than most people realize. Because when you've spent years fighting for acceptance, peace begins to feel like a luxury. And once you find it, you protect it. One day, my business partner invited me to speak at a private event for young entrepreneurs. The room was filled with ambitious people. Many were just beginning their careers. Many were facing challenges that felt impossible. As I stood in front of them, I thought about my own journey, not the success, the struggle. Because that's where the real lessons were. So instead of talking about business strategies, I talked about self-worth. I talked about rejection. I talked about failure. I talked about believing in yourself when nobody else does. When the event ended, dozens of people approached me. Some thanked me. Some shared their own stories. One young man stood quietly until everyone else had left. Then he walked over and said something I'll never forget. I've spent years trying to prove myself to people who don't appreciate me. His voice shook slightly. Today was the first time I realized I don't have to. For a moment, I simply smiled. Because I understood exactly what he meant. That realization changes everything, not overnight, but little by little, and eventually it changes your entire life. Meanwhile, my family relationships continued finding a healthier balance. The changes that once felt surprising had become normal. My parents respected me as an adult. Jessica and I had developed a genuine friendship. And perhaps most importantly, I no longer felt responsible for fixing everyone else's feelings. That used to be one of my biggest burdens. I wanted everyone to be happy. I wanted everyone to approve of me. I wanted everyone to understand me. Now I understood something different. Other people's opinions belong to them. My peace belongs to me. That lesson gave me freedom. One evening, while reviewing applications for the mentorship program, I noticed something. Many of the stories sounded familiar. Young people feeling overlooked. Young people feeling underestimated. Young people wondering if they were enough. As I read their words, I thought about the younger version of myself, the girl who carried those exact same fears. If she could see me now, she would probably think I had everything figured out. But the truth is much simpler. I still face challenges. I still make mistakes. I still have difficult days. The difference is that I no longer measure my value by those things, and that changes everything. As I closed my laptop that evening and looked out at the city lights beyond my window, a deep sense of gratitude filled my heart. Not because life was perfect, because life was peaceful, and peace is something I once believed I would never have. Success gave me opportunities. Success gave me freedom. But peace gave me happiness. And if I could leave you with one lesson from my story, it would be this. Sometimes people only see your value after you stop trying to prove it. Sometimes the world notices you only after you've stopped seeking its approval. But the greatest moment isn't when they finally see your worth. The greatest moment is when you finally see it yourself. And if you've ever been underestimated, if you've ever been ignored, if you've ever spent years feeling like you weren't enough, please hear this. You do not need anyone's permission to recognize your own value. You never did. And the day you truly understand that is the day your life begins to change.